clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
All right, welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. Hope you guys are all doing awesome here. So tonight's tale, I'm going to talk about some restaurant-related crimes and murders. So I'll add a few stories in here from Canada and as well from our friends from the United States. So let's get down to it. So the first case will be on a man named Kevin Tyrell Davis. He was born on July 22nd, 1991. Now his family nicknamed him as KD and said he was the light and the heart of his family and friends. He also had a smile as bright as the sun itself. So they had nothing but good things to say about him, right? And they also said that this guy totally enjoyed life. He lived every day to its fullest. So a little bit about the tale here. He was enjoying his time at a Popeye's chicken franchise up in Oxon Hill, Maryland. This is about 12 miles south outside of Washington, D.C. Oxon Hill was named for like a colonial 18th century manor home of Thomas Addison. So this fucking place burned down in 1895. It was then replaced in 1929 by a larger 49-room neo-Georgian style home called Oxon Hill Manor. And now it stands on a bluff over the Potomac River. So, little details, I guess. Now, Kevin had popped in to get one of the many popular chicken sandwiches here at Popeyes that they offer up. So the sandwich was designed to help Popeyes compete with like Chick-fil-A and other market leaders in the fast food chicken chain. So when Popeyes had brought it back, Popeyes was selling like as many as 1,000 chicken sandwiches per day. Like that's every fucking different restaurant and stuff. It actually became a viral sensation and sparked the chicken sandwich wars. So this whole sandwich that they made featured like a hand-battered buttermilk breaded chicken breast, pickles, and mayonnaise on a brioche bun. And it was just a simple name. They actually called it the Popeyes Chicken Sandwich. And it was valued at a price of $3.99 per sandwich. I mean, or you could just make a combo out of the whole thing too. Now, the release of the sandwich was met with such massive hype that it resulted in long lines inside, and the drive-thrus were just bumper to bumper on the outside. And total sellouts were at Popeyes locations across the USA. And with such success of the sandwich here, it inspired other fast food chains to either introduce a new sandwich or revamp their own already known chicken sandwiches. So this whole thing led to be what became known as the Chicken Sandwich Wars. Now, after Popeyes was selling out of this, the sandwich was temporarily removed from the menu due to supply issues, and then it was relaunched on November 3rd, 2019, which was National Sandwich Day. So our customers actually began dubbing 2019 as the year of the chicken sandwich. So over 20 American fast food brands added fried chicken sandwiches to their menus the next following 2 years. So this included places like fucking Golden Chick, KFC, Fatburger, Church's Chicken, Wendy's, Sonic, Jack in the Box, right? You know, like your normal restaurants. So back to the Popeyes. While here, Davis cut to the front of the line for chicken sandwiches. So he skipped a bunch of people that were waiting. And this was on November 4th of 2019. So after he did this, a verbal agreement started between Davis and another man. This was one Rico McLean, a 30-year-old. And apparently this line here was designated specifically for those who were waiting to order the chicken sandwich that was in high demand. So they yelled at each other for a little bit here inside of the restaurant, and then it carried on outside the parking lot. So the fight continued on. Now they walked out the front door together, and this is where this Rico dude ended up pulling a knife out on Davis, and he fatally stabbed him over a fucking chicken sandwich. Now, Davis was stabbed once in the upper body. So witnesses seen all this shit go down, and they called 911, and police responded rather quickly. This was about the 7 p.m. mark. So they discovered Davis laying outside in a pool of blood in the parking lot. Now, police quickly acted. They administered first aid to Davis until the ambulance arrived. But, unfortunately, he died a short time later. Now, this Rico dude was nowhere to be found. He fled the scene shortly after taking this dude's life. So he was now on the run from the law. The attacker was wearing a backward baseball cap, a yellow shirt, and a black jacket, and he actually took off in a car. Now, police recovered the knife that was used from the scene, so he just left this fucking thing behind. And authorities don't believe that the suspect and the victim actually knew each other. So this was like a first-time encounter. Now, the fast food chain also made a public statement to NBC News, but it was unsure of what caused the dispute, but said that there's no reason for someone to lose their life on a Monday night in a parking lot. They also said, our thoughts are with the victim's family and friends, and we are fully cooperating with local authorities. And with that, the investigation continued on. Now, police ended up watching the camera footage from the restaurant to see what the hell would have brought this on, right? Surveillance footage had showed several people were waiting in line specifically set aside for that chicken sandwich. And then Davis entered the store, and they noticed the suspect had a woman who appeared to be with them and 2 children alongside them in the Popeyes that Monday night. She was also described as a person of interest in the case and clarified that she is a witness, not a suspect, and that they do not expect to charge her. And there were about 3 dozen people, including several children, that were in the eatery at the time of the confrontation. Now, one of the officers from the Prince George County Police Department actually recognized this dude because he had a couple run-ins with him before on numerous occasions. So authorities then made a public statement about McLean being armed and dangerous and urged the public to call 911 if he's spotted. They also offered up a $25,000 reward for any information leading to his arrest. So now that they knew who he was, all they had to do was look for this dude. So it didn't take long for them to go pick him up. And once they picked him up, he was later found guilty, this was in April that year, of second-degree murder for killing Kevin Davis on November 4, 2019. And the Popeyes restaurant that they were at is located in the 6200 block of Livingston Road. Police found McLean at his home on Nova Avenue up in Capitol Heights. Now, friends recall Davis as a good man, a bit of a wild card, but he was a good man. You know, one of the boys said that he'll always be there for you. He's got your back, and he'd give you the shirt off his back. Now, another friend said that he remembered him as a very good man who would regularly hang out around the shopping center with friends. And during court, state's attorney Aisha Braveboy said that McLean is being held accountable for his actions. She mentioned that we hope, again, that he does become rehabilitated, that he becomes remorseful for the pain and the hurt that he caused, and that he will never engage in criminal activities again. And she also said this incident was a senseless tragedy that never should have happened. And this whole fucking confrontation that happened outside lasted about 15 seconds. Nobody should be that mad over a chicken sandwich in that less of fucking time, you know what I mean? To stab somebody in 15 seconds while walking out over a chicken sandwich is nuts. Now, the state attorney said that he will have to serve at least 50% of his sentence, and with time served already, he could be out in less than 22 years. That's fucking crazy. Now, the state's attorney also wanted him to go on probation after prison, but the judge did not sentence McLean to probation, saying that he knows McLean's kids will need him and he doesn't want his probation to interfere with that. And Davis's mother later declined news reports and shit like that, but later on in court she told McLean that she would pray for him. So she said, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for you every day, and I hope that you were rehabilitated up. And then McLean then apologized to the Davis family for what had happened. And the judge mentioned that that was his first time showing any remorse throughout this process. So, I mean, at least he was remorseful, I guess, but he did end up stabbing that guy to death, which sucks. But let's move on with the next tale here. Next tale, I'll cover the Kentucky Fried Chicken murders. So this event happened down in Kilgore, Texas, United States, on September 23rd of 1983. Now, Kilgore is a city in the Gregg and Rusk counties in Texas, has a population of some over 13,000. It's located where Interstate 20 and US 259 converge, south of the Sabine River, and it's about 115 miles east of Dallas. Now, Kilgore, Texas is actually a great place here, full of discoveries, lots of interest. It's home to the greatest oil boom, and where the first official dance drill team brought show business to the football gridiron. So, good for them. So what happened here up in Kilgore was an armed robbery that claimed the lives of 5 wonderful people. This is just by a couple of fucking dickheads here who tried to stick up the joint right around closing time. And those victims were Opie Ann Heatley Hughes. She was 39. She was born February 16th, 1944, up in Breckenridge, Stevens County, Texas. She was a resident of Kilgore for about 11 years after moving from Breckenridge, and she was a member of the Church of Christ, and her spouse was a man named Jack Wayne Hughes. She's buried at Staley Cemetery, Early, Brown County, Texas. Next victim, Joseph Jerome Johnson. He was only 20 years old. He was born September 25th, 1963, in Texas, USA, and he's buried at the Overton City Cemetery, Overton, Rusk County, Texas. Now, Joey was the second son of Catherine Ann Stevens Johnson and Lewis William Johnson Sr. So the kid was a hard-working man. He had goals, a huge loving family circle that surrounded him. And it just fucking sucks that it was all taken away in the blink of an eye. Now, all these people would have done so much fucking good in this world. He also had 3 sisters and 1 brother. Now, next victim, Montgomery Lewis, or Monty for short, Landers. He was 19 years old. He was born May 2nd, 1964, down in Germany. Now, he's buried at Friendship Cemetery in Friendship, Smith County, Texas. Some actually might know this place as Starville. So, next victim, there was David Wayne Maxwell. He was 20 years old, and he was born on March 11th, 1963, up in San Diego County, California. His parents were Donald Maurice Maxwell and Patricia Gwendolyn. And his parents were Donald Maurice Maxwell and Patricia Gwendolyn, or Pat Baker Maxwell. Now, he's buried in Davis Cemetery, Henderson, Rusk County, Texas. And our last victim, folks, was Mary Louise Woodall Tyler. She was 37 years old. She was born March 18, 1946, in Many Sabine Parish, Louisiana, USA. And she's buried up in Kilgore Memorial Gardens, Smith County, Texas. Now, all these people were on shift. There was Mary Tyler, Opie Hughes, Joey Johnson. These guys were on duty at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, located on Highway 259. David Maxwell, he was an employee who was off duty, but he was there just to give Johnson a ride home. And Monty Landers was there to visit Joey Johnson and David, because they were going to go hit up a party after work. Now, the ones that did the robbery were Darnell Hartsfield, and Romeo Pinkerton. Well, robbery's kind of putting it fucking lightly here. The whole thing ended up being a mass murder. So as the tale goes, the crew was finishing up all their cleaning duties and they were preparing to lock the doors of the KFC for the night. Joey Johnson was taking out the trash out the back door when a couple of dudes with guns overpowered him and brought him back inside. They began waving their little fucking guns around and they started to rob the joint. Now shit went down pretty quick and the perpetrators took the money from the registers as well as the bank deposit bags and took all five inside the restaurant with them outside and put them into a white van. Later on, Kim, the daughter of Mary, this was the manager on duty, she had showed up at about 10:30 to 11 p.m. that night. Now, she found the door to the restaurant unlocked, which was pretty unusual, as it should be closed, right? Plus, she sees blood running off the entrance door. Now, once inside, she sees blood all over the place. Now, utensils are all spilled over, along with a bunch of napkins that seem to have been thrown everywhere. Now, things are definitely a little bit out of place. Plus, there's nobody in the restaurant at all. Now, her mother, Mary, she isn't on shift, she's nowhere to be seen, and neither are any of the staff or any of the customers. Nobody was in back, nobody was in the washrooms. It was just really weird. So she first makes a call to the local authorities and then tells them what she saw. So it doesn't take police long to show up here and the investigation starts. Now, around the 12 bells of midnight, David Maxwell's wife, who was pregnant at the time, pulls into the parking lot, and her name was Lana. So she sees the cops and kind of gets a little bit worried. So she tells police that David went into the KFC earlier on to work his shift, and she hasn't seen him since. Now, he was supposed to go meet up with, like, Joey and Monty and all that. So police knew right there that there were others missing from the store besides the ones that were on staff that night. So police have no idea what the fuck's going on. And they first guessed that this whole thing was like an abduction. So they called the Texas Rangers in and didn't take them long to come and check shit out. Now, an abduction is the action of taking someone away by force or deception. So they all work together here. They take notes, the sheriffs, the police, and they look for any evidence that they can find. Now, another thing here, the KFC was just busy earlier in the afternoon, and supper time took a whacking too. Now, this was because of a hometown football game that was taking place later on in the night. So people were ordering in, ordering out, and people were just taking food with them. This game had kept most of the town occupied. So it would have been a perfect time to go, commit a robbery and whatnot, as a lot of people would have been busy. Just a little bit about the home team here. The team was the Kilgore Bulldogs. So they had a good record that year. It was 6-4. And they had the coach there. His name is Jim Miller. He was born March 27th, 1932, up in Ennis, Texas. Now, this Coach Miller dude began his coaching career as an assistant coach throughout high schools in Texas. Back in 1967, Miller was hired as a defensive coordinator coach for Kilgore. Now, he was in the junior college program in Texas. Now, in 76, he was named head football coach as a successor to Charles Simmons. So high school football is just a huge draw to the community. Still is to this day, actually, because it just brings the community very high sales and revenue and everything. And getting back to the case here, this case goes on into the morning hours. And once the morning hits, everybody gets big news. So he was out, he saw something from afar in one of the oil field leases near Country Road 232, Rusk County. So he walked a little bit closer, and he noticed that it was 4 bodies lined up in a row. All their heads had been pointed in the north direction, and each one had 2 bullet wounds to the back of their heads. I believe Joey had been shot 3 times altogether. Police were called, they ended up doing a search, and then they found the body of Opie some 50 yards away from the other four. So 50 yards is a good distance here. I mean, it's pretty much equivalent to half the length of a standard American football field, minus the end zones. So when police found her body, they did a quick check. They noticed some defensive wounds on her. She had also been raped, and male DNA had also been found on the poor woman. But back in the 80s, like, DNA processing was complete shit. I mean, it would take forever to get results. It wasn't as big as it is today, right? They also found a broken fingernail on Joey. This was located between his belt and his pants. Now, his fingernails were intact, so obviously this must have come from somewhere else, possibly the attacker. And law enforcement had also learned that the nightly numbers, or the till cash out, had been called into headquarters. So maybe somebody overheard those numbers being called in from the staff, and then they decided to rob the place. I mean, it's a possibility. This was later found out by witnesses that were in the store. Now, this call was between Mary and her daughter Kim, and witnesses gave descriptions of some of the others that were in the restaurant as well around that time. They interviewed a bunch of people here, and they also interviewed two other people. There was a dude named Darnell Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton. This is about a week after the crime. Now, these two men had really good alibis, and apparently they talked to police for a bit, and then eventually they were dismissed. So they told police that they weren't in the restaurant that night, plus there were no video cameras at that time. So they only had evidence at the scene to go off of, and then police continued on with the investigation, and they just kiboshed them too. So they're like, yeah, all right, whatever, have a good day. And there were other witnesses that came forward later on. There was a dude named Bobby Robinson. He said he was driving by the KFC and saw that the only lights that were on were in the back of the restaurant. The back door of the KFC was open, and there was a light-colored van that was parked at the KFC's back door, and he didn't see anybody in the KFC or in the van. Police interviewed a woman named Star Spagano. Spagano said that she was in the restaurant the night of the kidnappings and recalled that two African American men entered the restaurant after she did. She was in line with her boyfriend at the time, who was a little bit ahead of her, and they ordered some food. So she said that she believes they overheard the same phone conversation that she did, in which the employees mentioned that there was $2,000 at the restaurant. Now, Spagano identified Hartsfield with certainty from a stack of photos. Now, she also identified a person who has not been charged in the case. Now, a woman named Linda Hardy mentioned that she was driving by the KFC and saw a light-colored utility-type van parked near the back of the KFC in the drive-through lane, facing the wrong way. Now, it's just a little bit of info for police, right? While looking things over in the restaurant, officers gathered up the napkins. Some of these had blood on them, and there was also a cash register tape box with blood on it. And all this evidence was being sent to a lab for testing. Now, also, prior to the murders, as she was walking into the KFC with her boyfriend, Spagano also saw a white van parked at the rear of the KFC near the dumpster. And she kind of found it odd because there were no parking spaces there, right? There was a whole parking lot, but why would they park there? Now, at one point, law enforcement arrested a man named James Earl Mankins during the course of this investigation here. Now, this dude had like prior drug convictions, shit like that. And he was also the son of a state representative, Jimmy Mankins. That was the other dude's name, the father. Police charged him in 1995 in 5 capital murder indictments. Now, later on, charges against Mankins Jr. were dismissed after DNA evidence failed to show that Mankins Jr. was involved in the crime. The DNA analysis concluded that the fingernail was not his, and he was released after the beginning of the pre-trial proceedings. Police also thought that he was the third suspect in the murders. Now, he was later thrown in jail, not because of all this, but for some drug charges here that he accumulated over the years. And he currently remains in a federal prison in Texarkana. His attorneys hope to have the removal of his name from the records of the indictment and stuff. Hoping to get him an early release on things, right? Get him out back into society and shit. Now, Glenn Johnson, this dude here was a former firearms examiner with the Texas Department of Public Safety Laboratory up in Tyler. Now, he said analysis of bullet fragments recovered from the bodies and the murder scene indicated that 11 bullets were fired from at least 2 guns during the crime. And although he tested at least 50 guns brought to him by law enforcement officials, the murder weapons have never been identified. But this didn't stop the case from going on, right? People were still looking at it, along with new technology being on the go now. They found some stuff after reviewing the case yet again. So they used the Combined DNA Index System, so more commonly known as CODIS. It was explained that the National DNA Database, that Hartsfield and Pinkerton's DNA was connected to the Kilgore's restaurant through this database. So police took those old napkins that had blood on them, the box that came with the 3 separate DNA analysis. That was like the cash register box and shit. So this was Romeo and Darnell. Also, the DNA of an unidentified male. Now, they still, to this day, don't know who the third suspect is. And also, they tried to get it out of the 2 guys there, and they never said anything about a third accomplice. The blood evidence that they found on the floor as well didn't match any of the 5 victims. After analyzing it, the fingernail, the box, and the napkins, they found the blood on the napkin to be Pinkerton's. And also, that semen that they found on the victim's pants there didn't match either of those 2. So this had to come from the unidentified male. And again, nobody knows who the fuck this is. So the recently developed DNA evidence identified the blood on the box of cash register tapes from the restaurant had belonged to Hartsfield, even though he mentioned that he was never in the KFC that night, and the blood that was on the napkin was identified as Pinkerton's. Police kind of figured these guys were fucking full of shit. Now comes court. So Spagano, the one who talked earlier and who was interviewed by police, she said she was walking into the KFC with her boyfriend there. She saw a white van parked outside near the dumpster area. And she said she found it odd, about the parking spaces and stuff. And then she testified that Hartsfield ordered and received his food. And then he and his companion both left the KFC, walked towards the back of the KFC. And then she didn't notice the vehicle leave the parking lot. Around closing time, when she and her boyfriend finished eating and then left the KFC, she noticed that the white van was still parked in the same place. Now, a dude named James Rowe, he also testified that near 10 p.m. that night, he saw a white Ford Econoline van driven by a white man leaving the KFC. He said he almost crashed into it, or collided with the van here when it pulled out from the back of the KFC. Now, he described the driver as a white male with long black hair and a long black shaggy beard. He also wore a toboggan-style cap, so like a winter hat. And he said also, could have been a mask, and it was kind of like pushed back on his head a little bit. And he also mentioned that he did not see any African Americans in the van, so it's just fucking this white guy with a fucking beard and a hat driving around. Now, another woman here, Marcia Williams, who lived next to the oil field here where the victims' bodies were found, she said that around 10:57 on the night of the murders, she saw a van having only its parking lights on pull into her driveway, stop there for a minute, and then it began to drive away. Now, she admitted that she did not know what color the van was, but that it was her impression that it was a darker color. Now, she said about 7 to 12 minutes later, she heard what sounded like 4 rapid gunshots pretty close by. After a noticeable pause here, after about 5 minutes, she then heard what sounded like one more gunshot. Gunshots weren't unusual for the area, so she didn't really report it. About a week later, after the murders, while driving into Kilgore, a man named Sam Johnson nearly collided with a white service-type van when the driver of the van ran a stop sign and he almost fucking smoked him. And the van actually fit the description that was given by many others there. But it was also found out that Hartsfield was living with a dude named Alton Winston in the early 1980s, back in March of 1984. Now, Winston was arrested while driving a white utility van. So, I mean, that's pretty fucking coincidental, right? I mean, there was a white van used in a robbery, and then this guy knew a guy who had a white van, right? So, fuck whatever. Plus, Hartsfield was seen driving a white van similar to the one that was used at the KFC like a week later, week and a half later, something like that. Fast forward to November 10th of 2004. Now, Darnell Hartsfield was indicted on aggravated perjury charges related to his grand jury testimony about whether he was in the restaurant the night of the abductions. Now, investigators and attorneys also looked through the pictures, like the bodies, everything, right? The whole fucking crime scene. Now, 3 of the victims were shot with 2 separate revolvers. 2 victims were shot twice with the same weapon. 7 shots appeared to have the same rifling characteristics. And since revolvers only shoot 6 times, the ballistic experts concluded that one weapon must have been reloaded, or there must have been a third gun involved. Now, in order to convict Hartsfield here, the murders, the state actually had to prove a couple things. One, that Hartsfield was a party to a conspiracy to commit aggravated robbery. 2, the capital murder was committed by either Hartsfield or by someone else who was acting with him. Number 3, that capital murder was committed in furtherance of the conspiracy to commit aggravated robbery. And numeral 4, that Hartsfield should have anticipated the capital murder could be the result of the aggravated robbery. So from these facts, the jury was free to infer that the white van seen at the KFC during the robbery was actually the same van that Williams saw near the murder scene, and the same van that Hartsfield was seen driving. And further, the short time period between the robbery and the murders allowed the jury to infer that Hartsfield and the other participants in the aggravated robbery also participated in the murders, because there was no time for third parties, wholly unrelated to the aggravated robbery, to have subdued, kidnapped, and murdered the 5 victims. Now, on October 26, 2005, the jury convicted Hartsfield of aggravated perjury, and he was sentenced to life in prison back in November of 2005, I believe. Now, funny thing is here that these 2 dudes were already in prison for other crimes, and they were just like fucking brought out and they were arrested, and they were charged for their part in the KFC murders. Now, Darnell was like 44 at the time. This was back in 2005. And Romeo Pinkerton was also about 47 years old at the time. So police just went, grabbed him out of jail, took him to court, and then back to fucking jail. Now, like I said, police and other officials knew that this guy was full of shit, right? All the whole fucking perjury bullshit or whatever. Police were like, we have DNA evidence, dude. This places you at the crime scene, right? And the guy just lied, tried to fucking make up different scenarios like he wasn't even there and stuff. Now, the whole aggravated perjury thing, I just want to touch on that. Now, this is like a more serious form of perjury because it's aggravated. Nah, but in all seriousness, this is when a false statement made under oath could have affected the outcome of the proceedings. Now, in essence, it's like a lie during a fucking legal process that could significantly alter the course of justice. Dun dun dun. Oh, and it was also found out during all this shit that these 2 were actually cousins, too. There was a Texas Attorney General here. He announced capital murder indictments against them. This was Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton there for the slayings. Now, on October 2007, Pinkerton pleaded guilty to 5 counts of murder and avoiding a possible death sentence because he was sentenced to 5 concurrent life sentences. So during the whole robbery of the KFC, the perpetrators actually rummaged through the shelves beneath the main cash register, leaving them like wicked messy, all disorganized and shit. And there was a box there that once held like a roll of like register tape, and this was found in the KFC with Hartsfield blood on it. Now, a couple of co-workers who worked there earlier on, like I believe that was Ashley and Leanne Killingsworth, they actually worked in the restaurant and everything, and they don't remember that stain being there before the events of that night. So that was from that night that happened, right? Now, KFC employees later testified that the box was the type used by KFC, usually containing rolls of register tape for the cash register, and such a box would actually have been located on the shelf directly beneath the register. Now, though the case was like 22 years old by the time they figured all this shit out, there were actually a lot of witnesses that had a hard time remembering shit, right? So, like, they'd go on the stand, they'd be like, fuck, man, it's been so many years, right? And they get mixed up and whatnot. Because, I mean, it's just been so long since everything happened. But, I mean, in the end, the 2 men got what they deserved. You know, they fucking killed all these people. For what? You know, fucking shit, piddly ass amount of money. Now, these 2 were also originally supposed to get the death penalty here, but that was later waived by the state due to the evidence and their confessions and pleading guilty and all that shit. And they both got capital murder charges. I mean, fuck them. Darnell Hartsfield of Tyler was found guilty on all 5 counts in one of the longest unresolved mass murder cases in Texas. He received 5 automatic life sentences, which State District Judge Clay Gossett ordered to be served consecutively. October 29, 2007, Romeo Pinkerton pleaded guilty to 5 lesser counts of murder and was sentenced to 5 concurrent life sentences as a part of a plea deal. He is currently serving his sentence at the James B. Alfred unit in Wichita Falls. May 4th, 2022, Darnell Hartsfield died after suffering a massive stroke in his jail cell at the French M. Robertson unit up in Abilene. I believe he was 61. And it couldn't fucking have happened to a nicer person, right? And lastly, while I just wrap up this case here, Pinkerton's actually still being in jail and probably still being a dick. And that's all I got for this tale, folks. So it took them a while, but they got it all figured out. Just sucks that so many innocent people had to die, and these fuckheads just robbed the store. But we'll move on to the next one here as we wind down. Now, this one happened last year in 2024. This one's kind of greasy. This happened at a Chick-fil-A restaurant. So law enforcement authorities arrested the independent owner of a Chick-fil-A franchise location up in Ohio. This is over a whole like alleged sexual crime against a minor. Ugh. Police arrested Stacy Lee Austin. The claim appeared on like multiple social media sites too. It was posted fucking everywhere. Including Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, all that. According to a Facebook post by the Rowan County Sheriff's Office, deputies arrested the 49-year-old on a charge of statutory sexual offense against a 15-year-old child. What Chick-fil-A is actually an American fast food restaurant chain and one of the largest chains that specialize in chicken sandwiches. So get that into you. Yeah, and like around the world, this whole place has like somewhere between like 32 and 35,000 fucking places worldwide. Now, it was founded by this dude named Samuel Truett Cathy. He was born on March 14, 1921. So he passed, obviously, back in September of 2014. So their headquarters is located up at 5200 Buffington Road up in Atlanta, Georgia. Originally, the whole thing used to be called the Dwarf Grill, or the Dwarf House. The original store was located near the Ford Motor Company Atlanta Assembly Plant. And this was like a source of like the whole fucking restaurant's patrons for a lot of years, right? So on March 7th, 2024, deputies responded to reported breaking and entering and found Austin with a resident's 15-year-old girl. So this whole post that was made claimed that he did admit to sexual acts and had been communicating with the child via social media. So before police were called, a parent walked in on this dude here with his 15-year-old kid who had been sexually assaulted. Now, Austin, the fucking pedophile dude here, grew up in North Carolina. He was actually chosen as a Chick-fil-A owner operator back in 2019. Then he opened up his whole Chick-fil-A back in 2020 up in St. Clairsville. Now, North Carolina here, pretty good state. Now, it's up in the southeastern region of the U.S. So this place is bordered by a few places too, like Virginia, South Carolina, the Atlantic Ocean, Tennessee. That's off to the west there, so that kind of borders it. Now, the whole state here is like the 28th largest and 9th most populous of the U.S., and the population's like over like fucking 10 million. So, I mean, that's a couple people for sure. Now, Austin drove over 400 miles from Belmont, Ohio to Rowan County, North Carolina. So, I mean, it's fucking crazy that, like, he went all this way, man. Ugh, people are weird. And investigators actually found Austin's underwear and some of the juvenile's clothing inside a bathroom trash can. They also found, like, some more clothing here. Austin actually allegedly admitted to engaging in sexual acts with the minor. And, fucking said that right off the bat, right? Fucking sicko. So originally planned, Austin had tried to arrange to pick up the juvenile up in the Tar Heel state here. The street the victim lived on was called John Michael Lane. And police pulled up the entire convo between the two here, so they found everything on social media. So they logged in, checked all that out there, and then they fucking threw this into evidence here so they could use that against him. And Austin ended up being charged with a statutory sexual offense with a child and is actually being held without bond as this case goes forth in the future. Even though the guy was like caught for fucking doing things with a minor, all this guy was worried about was losing his job, right? So like he even asked police, he's like, well, what's gonna happen now? Am I gonna lose my job? Like, what the fuck do you think, right? I don't know. That's like all that dude has to whine about, right? But I mean, fucking somebody's gonna fucking get him in jail or something. And yeah, this dude ended up being charged with statutory sex offense with a child and 2 counts of felony soliciting a child by computer. This guy is going to be locked up in the Rowan County Detention Center database. So he's going to remain jailed there and go fucking nowhere. So now this guy can't hurt any more fucking kids. Now, Chick-fil-A ended up hearing about this here, so they confirmed that Austin, who owned the franchise back in fucking St. Clairsville, he would no longer be present at the restaurant. Now, Austin's LinkedIn profile says that he's been a Chick-fil-A franchise owner in St. Clairsville for like over 4 years. Also, a spokesperson responded to the allegations against Austin here. And, once this whole shit broke to the media and stuff, they said, we have zero tolerance for the type of serious conduct alleged. Stacey Austin currently is an independent franchise owner, but as the investigation and legal process continues, he will not be present in the restaurant anymore. Now, police also checked this dude's records here, learned that Austin used to live in the Charlotte area before he took ownership of the restaurant in Ohio. Now, he's also listed as the authorized representative of Maximum Ministries, Inc., which is like, I believe this is based in Statesville. Whatever the fuck that is, but now he's in jail for his disgusting crime, and hopefully that's where he stays for the remainder of his fucking life. Only one can hope. But our next tale here we're going to talk about the Brown's Chicken Massacre from back in 1993. This occurred up in Palatine, Illinois. So this is a village here of a little over 67,000 or so. Now, it's actually the 7th largest community in Cook County and the 18th largest in Illinois, founded back in 1866. So, tale goes, on January 8th of 1993, 7 people were shot and killed at Brown's Chicken and Pasta. Now, some call this one of the most shocking massacres in the history of Illinois. So, for those that don't know, because I didn't, what Brown's is, it's a chain of fast food restaurants that specialize in fried chicken and is based in the Chicago metropolitan area. It was located at 168 West Northwest Highway up in Illinois. Now, the chain actually traces back to 1949 when John and Belva Brown opened a restaurant in Bridgeview, Illinois. Now, this whole fucking place did so well that Brown's had expanded to many locations throughout the U.S. back in the 1970s. Even back in the 80s there, where they introduced some pasta to their menu. Now, I believe there were like fucking 300 or more locations spread out amongst 13 states, so they were doing pretty good for the whole chicken and pasta soiree. The duck and goose soiree. Now, the whole victim list here, there were 7 victims total. So the owners of the place, there was one 50-year-old named Richard E. Ellenfelt. He was born November 10th of 1942 up in Portage, Columbia County, Wisconsin, United States of America. And his 49-year-old wife, Lynn A. Ellenfelt. Now, the couple married back in 1964. They had 3 girls over the course of their marriage. And old fucking Richard here was just a hard-working dude, man. He and his wife had actually quit their original jobs so they can pursue running the Brown's Chicken franchise. That takes fucking moxie. Now, Lynn was born on October 6, 1943, down in Clintonville, Waupaca County, Wisconsin. So this whole shebang went unsolved for, I believe, 9 years. Now, the 5 employees, they were 46-year-old Guadalupe Maldonado, 16-year-old Michael C. Castro, 17-year-old Ricky L. Solis, 32-year-old Thomas Menes, and 31-year-old Marcus Nielsen. So Castro and Solis were actually Palatine High School students, just working there part-time. Now, 6 were found shot to death, while another had been brutally stabbed. And the 2 cunts that did this, that committed the robbery, were Juan Luna and James Degorski. Now, all the victims had been killed in 2 walk-in freezers, and all had been shot in the head. Some suffered gunshot wounds to their hands, obviously, from defensive wounds. So, I mean, it just shows that everybody tried to fight back during the robbery, but they're overpowered by these dickheads. Now, the owner, Richard Ellenfelt, and his wife, Lynn, they were also stabbed a couple times. So the place that they were found, now, the walk-in freezer, this is a closed refrigerator room that one can enter, specifically designed for long-term storage of frozen goods, say like meat, vegetables, seafood. Now, the whole thing maintains temperatures at or below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. So this helps like preserve the quality of the items, such as like frozen foods. So these are quite common in restaurants, even grocery stores, right, or any other food-related business. Now, the regulations here for the walk-in freezer, they must have a total chilled storage area of less than 3,000 square feet. So, I mean, they're just pretty boss. I mean, walk-in freezers are cool. So, on that night in 1993, 2 killers pulled up in a Ford Tempo. So this is a car with front engine, front drive, 5-passenger, 2 or 4-door sedan, manufactured and marketed by Ford. This is for the model years 1984 to 1994, so about 10 years. So these guys hopped out of their car into the cold. I believe it was like 20 degrees or something back there in that January weather. Now they crossed a couple snowbanks here and shit, and they walked towards the restaurant. Now they were armed with a handgun, a bunch of bullets. I believe these were 38 caliber bullets. So they had them all stashed in their pockets. There was like no fucking boxes or nothing, right? And they walked into the chicken and pasta place here at around closing time. Now one robber had opened the entrance door with a sweater draped over his hand because he was kind of sketchy about leaving fingerprints. Now once inside, the employees were all cleaning up, trying to get out of there. The brown tile floor was mopped. The countertops and tables just fucking gleaming. Just normal shit you do for like a fucking restaurant close, right? But once inside, these guys are greeted as customers. So these guys actually ordered a meal too here, which they ate at the restaurant. And then they threw the scraps and shit in the garbage. Now what they got was a 4-piece chicken dinner. And this was the last item sold that showed up on the cash register tape. So, like I said, just the day's final sale, right? So this ended up being rung up at 9:08 p.m. Now these guys ended up grabbing a booth there, and that's where they fucking ate and they talked about shit, right? Now they didn't intend to leave any witnesses alive during the course of this robbery. Now that was one thing that they agreed on. So what these guys did here to stop people from escaping here, they actually wedged a piece of wood under the restaurant's back green painted door. Now Luna and Degorski, these guys started arguing a little bit here because Degorski was pissed over his friend's decision to fucking order dinner here. He's like, oh, the grease. Oh, he's gonna leave fingerprints everywhere, right? Fingerprints could ruin everything. He was just all nervous about that. And he was just trying to explain to him here, like, the whole reason that he ordered the food was so they could pose as last-minute customers, right? So what they did, they had a pair of rubber gloves each. So they ended up putting those on. But, I mean, it's kind of fucked up that, they didn't wear any masks to try to conceal their identities or anything, right? Well, let's just go in, eat some chicken, then rob the place, right? So they ended up going to the front counter to announce themselves. So Luna ended up firing a warning shot into the air, announcing a robbery. So obviously this is going to scare the employees enough to try to comply with their demands, all this. So he shot, and then he sent everybody into fucking panic mode. Worker Tom Menace, he actually ran and jumped over the counter here trying to escape, and then he was shot in the back midway over. So after he was shot, he's like, I've been shot. Then he was dragged into the west side walk-in freezer in the building. Now, another employee here tried to exit through the back door, but that wedged piece of wood prevented him from his escape. So he heard the other robbers going on to people like, get up, go to the back, all this shit here, and then some more shots ended up being fired. One of the owners was actually pulled into the freezer here, and then they were alongside Menace. Now, he was still dressed up in his white kitchen apron and all that, sprawled on the floor next to a storage shelf. And then the owner that was dragged in there was shot to death. And another young employee here, this is Rico, he was mopping the floor. He offered these guys money, but they told him to put it away, get to the back of the store. So Luna ended up kicking around the restaurant's east end here. So he was watching over a couple workers here. I believe there were 4 workers. And he was watching the wife, Lynn. And they fucking had shit on lockdown. Now, Luna's job here was just to make sure that nobody ran, right? Now, Degorski was more of the designated aggressor in the holdup, I guess, here. So Degorski reloaded his silver .38 caliber revolver ordered 3 people into the freezer. So suddenly, another employee, Marcus Nielsen, actually ran for one of the rear doors that was behind Luna. So Luna's like, what the fuck? So he did this whole karate stance and then ended up pushing Nielsen back towards Degorski. So Degorski hit him in the head with a gun, so he pistol whipped him, and then he kind of got a little bit drowsy here because of that. He tried to get him to his feet, but he was a little bit wobbly, and they just fucking put him in the freezer. Now, at this point here, it's where shit started to get a little bit wild. Armed with a knife, Luna told Lynn to open up the 2-door safe for them. She was fucking scared, right? Hands trembling, all that, right? She's like, all right, maybe if I do this, I'll get out of here alive, right? So she stuck the key in the safe, opened it up, and then Luna's like, turn around or whatever, and then he fucking cut her throat. Now, she was laying on the floor. She started gargling on her own blood, and then ran out of breath and died right then and there while doing their demands. So Degorski dragged her body into the east freezer and herded in the other 4. Now they were all yelling, don't shoot us. Come on, please don't shoot us. Everybody just shaking, trembling with fear. I mean, this is fucking crazy. But they knew right then and there that they'd never make it out alive. Now they crowded the rest of the employees into that freezer and they shot them. Now at one point, an employee vomited up some French fries when he got shot. And the victims, they pleaded for their lives, but to no avail. And they ended up shooting the rest, and the robbers began to clean up the crime scene. Now, Degorski is just a prick at this point. He even started kicking all the bodies just to make sure they were dead. And that right there is just a terrible way to disrespect the dead. Like, these two didn't have fucking morals about them anyway, right? But they started to clean up, like I said. So they mopped the floor. They wiped down any remaining traces of fingerprints. Now, the reason the floor was being mopped was to get rid of all the bloody footprints from people being back and forth, right? So they took the money from the now open safe and they put it all into a brown cloth bag. The whole robbery took about 45 minutes or so, and the men had even cut the lights from the circuit breaker. So with the lights out, the doors locked and everything, the restaurant would now appear closed for the night. So just sucked. I mean, they murdered the employees, then they exited through the rear door of the restaurant. Now they headed back to their vehicle. Degorski ended up driving, as Luna was too messed up over the whole thing, right? He was like just completely fucked up. Like they just robbed the place. Yeah, it was just crazy. So the 2 men drove to Carpentersville Dam, where they discarded the gun, the knife, and the casings into Fox River. Now the 2 had also been wearing like some older clothes and stuff, some older shoes, shit that wouldn't be missed and could be discarded easier. So after robbing and disposing of the evidence, they ended up meeting up with a woman named Eileen Bacala in a jewel store parking lot up in Carpentersville. So they proceeded to her house afterwards, where the defendants split up the money, and they ended up giving Bacala $50 that was owed to her. And this is where they spent the night. So she used the money that they gave her, and she went to Spring Hill Mall in West Dundee to buy some shoes. Now the men split the rest of the money, and I think they ended up getting like a total of $1,800, give or take. So they spent some time at Bacala's house. They smoked a bunch of marijuana, and that was it. The very next day, Bacala accompanied them and they cleaned up the vehicle here that was used in the robbery at a local Streamwood, Illinois car wash. Now they told Eileen about the robbery and, how this thing was going to be fucking big. Now the plan was to use her as an alibi in case police ever came snooping around. Like, oh no, we hung over here, we smoked some joints and shit, right? And this is where we spent the night. So they ended up chatting that they committed the offense because they wanted to see what it was like to kill someone. And they ended up telling her that if she told anybody, that they would kill her. So obviously she kept her mouth shut out of fear of being killed. Now, a little bit about those two men that robbed the place. One was Juan Antonio Luna Jr. He was born February 16th of 1974 in Zacatecas, Mexico. Fuck, I hope I said that right. And the next was James Eric Degorski, and he was born in Chicago, Illinois, USA. Now, both attended Fremd High School in the early 1990s. So this is like a 4-year high school. This is up in Palatine, Illinois, and it's part of Township High School District 211, located at 1000 South Quentin Road. Now, these two were a couple of alcoholic drug heads. The friends had drug abuse. They did cocaine. Later went into PCP and LSD and shit later on in life. And they told a few close friends that the reason they did this because they wanted to do something big together. Well, obviously, this was it, folks. Now, Luna actually used to work at Brown's for the Ellenfelds, but he left a week or so after they took over in May of 1992. Now, Luna also worked with Michael Castro. That was one of the Friday night cashiers. So Luna actually had knowledge of this whole building, right? He knew the workers' daily routine and everything, so that's what brought him in to rob this place. He knew that there were no alarms. He knew about the backroom safe, when more money might be in the safe, and that there were never any guards on shift, and when less customers would be present. So these two ended up laying low just to avoid the heat that was soon to be coming once police got word of the massacre. Now, Luna, like I said, he even knew some of the workers too, right? Like, he worked alongside like at least 3 of them at Brown's until he quit earlier on. He did leave on good terms and everything, but, obviously, fucking you didn't give a shit. And it just sucks that these guys were working on like a Friday evening here. They were just fucking doomed from the start, right? These guys didn't care that they even knew some of the workers or anything, right? That whole Browns job was just a leg up for these guys in life, right? They was kind of providing them a way out of like difficult pasts and like fucking life problems and shit. Like everybody wanted to work to better themselves in the long run, and they didn't get that chance. And yeah, these guys just killed everybody here, and now they were scot-free, right? But they left a whole fucking bloodbath in that fucking walk-in freezer, right? This is just a crime scene for investigators to find later. But eventually, police did end up getting calls that night because of the robbery. So a few hours after the robbery, police received a phone call from Michael Castro's parents to go do a wellness check on him. Now, it was a little bit out of the ordinary for him to not come home after the closing shift. Now, they told police that he never returned home from work. And they also told police that they called the restaurant a few times, but they got no answer. So police, obviously, were like, hey man, we'll swing by, we'll check shit out. And a little while later, they received another phone call. This was Guadalupe Maldonado's wife. Now, she too mentioned that he never came home from his shift either. So police end up driving to the restaurant, and officers park, and then they go check the front door. I mean, it's locked up tight. So they take a drive around, and they notice the car still there, and it was one of the employees' cars. So they go to the back door, they check it, boom, it's open. So the two cops enter the place. It's dark, as it should be, since everything's supposed to be closed by this point. And they finally see the blood on the floor of the restaurant, and they're like, oh shit, something went down here. So they checked the dining area, they checked behind counters, tables, they found nothing. So then they go back to where the freezers are. Once they opened one freezer, they saw 5 bodies, all bloodied, cold. A few were facing downward, some were facing upward. Now the other officer heads to the second cooler, and there he finds the 2 owners of the business. Now one of the walk-in freezer's door was actually propped open by an arm. Now Richard was found with 3 gunshot wounds to the head and face, and it was just a fucking massacre. So police just chalked this up as a crime scene, right? So they called for help to start collecting evidence and everything, right? Now they found the receipt for the 4-piece meal that was purchased at 9:08 p.m. So obviously they're curious about this purchase, considering the fucking food was placed after closing time. So what they did was check the trash. They found a brown paper bag and the box that the meal came in. They found some fries, some chicken parts, and chicken bones. So all this was taken in, bagged up, and taken as evidence. So what they did here was they ended up freezing all this stuff here, and they kept all the other evidence they found, like napkins and the food box and all this. This wasn't until DNA analysis kind of grew in the coming years. Now, a few hours later, police confirmed the names of the bodies, and they notified the public here, and they announced what they had found upon their investigation. And people heard this and they were just fucking devastated, right? Like, just wicked sad that their family members lost their lives over a fucking bullshit robbery. Now, while investigating, there was now a crowd that started to form. A lot of these people were just onlookers and shit that were outside of Brown's. I mean, the whole word was out, right? Reporters started rolling up, a bunch of photographers, TV camera crews and all that. They were all just chilling in the parking lot here. They tried to mingle with relatives of the workers and stuff and try to get their comments and everything, right? But I mean, too many people were just crying. Like, they were looking for answers here, looking for miracles, and hoping the investigation would be a quick one. But fortunately, it would take a while. Now, at some point during those early hours here, the phone on the restaurant wall started ringing. Now, it was answered by a cop. It was actually the WBBM AM radio. This is a reporter dude, I guess, asking about what he heard on the radio of the police scanner and stuff. He's like, well, what happened? Was the robbery going on and shit? And then nothing was even replied back. I believe one of the officers just hung up the fucking phone. I was like, I'm not dealing with that. Now, approximately a week after discovering the bodies, police arrested 5 men who they thought might have been responsible, but ended up winding up that none of them had anything to do with the murders, and all of them were released. And there was one individual here that was actually detained for another incident here, so he ended up getting kept in jail. And later on that month, there was a $100,000 reward offered up here for anybody who could bring in whoever was responsible, or, could bring any information that would bring them in. But nothing came from it, and it sucks. I mean, unfortunately, that didn't work. Now, time passes for a bit. In March of 1994, police arrest someone that they thought might have been responsible, but nothing ever happened with this. Buddy was released later on after learning that he wasn't the culprit. So they figured it out that he had nothing to do with it here, and yeah, they ended up moving forward. But police just kept pushing, like they wanted to pursue this to get a closure and an arrest. And even newspapers over the next couple of years, because this ended up going cold, they would actually make, little articles and stuff here, details of the crime and what, keeping it fresh in people's minds, which is a good thing. And this was mostly around the anniversary of the murders each year. Now, police even requested help from the public, one time or another here. Nothing ever came from that either. And for many years, like thousands of leads had failed to bring investigators the break that they needed to fucking solve this crime, right? Now, some people actually said this was like the most gruesome crime in Illinois history. Now, at one point, Luna was actually one of 300 employees that were interviewed, and he was cleared not long after the killing. Well, I guess I should say former employee, right? But they did investigate a lot of people, and they didn't have anything to tie him to those crimes. And it sucks, man. I mean, what do you do? And now fast forward to 2002. A former girlfriend of Mr. Degorski, her name was Ann Lockett. She came forward with details of the crime. Now, back in late 2001, Lockett was a college student at Eastern Illinois University. So what she decided to do was tell 3 friends what she knew. And they're like, you gotta tell police, right? So eventually this led to both those guys' arrests in May of 2002. Now the investigators said that only someone linked directly to the crime would have known these details and stuff, right? So the woman told investigators that she waited 9 years because Mr. Degorski had threatened to kill her if she revealed what he told her about that night. So police fucking take this and they run with it. So they find the two and they arrest both men without incident. Now the Palatine Police Department took the 2 suspects into custody on May 16, 2002. Luna was actually chicken shit and he later confessed to the crime during an interrogation with police officials. So through his lawyers and everything, he would later claim that this guy was coerced into confessing and everything through police brutality. And that his friends and his family and all that, who were Mexican nationals, were threatened with deportation. Cops fucking laid it on pretty thick, I guess. So all this was found out, and fucking lawyers weren't having it. Now, Degorski also confessed through an audio recording during interrogation. So both pleaded not guilty to the charges against them, and if convicted, they could face the death penalty for their crimes. Now, both men were charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder and armed robbery upon their arrests. Both were held without bail down in Cook County Jail. Now, Luna's trial here would actually begin before Degorski's. I believe Luna's trial started April the 13th. Now, there was a judge there, Vincent M. Goggin. Now, he got down to business right off the bat. He barred the lawyers from speaking to the news media outside the courtrooms and stuff because he didn't want the case fucked with. So once they started here, they showed everybody in the court all the evidence from the crime scene, the pictures, the blood, the fucking bodies, everything. And by this time, DNA tests and all that were like totally upgraded by now, right? So they linked the remains of the partially eaten chicken dinner that was retrieved from the trash can to saliva samples gotten from the men a few weeks before their arrests. But defense lawyers argued this as well, that the DNA analysis results were not conclusive, and that the chicken dinner was mishandled and possibly tampered with. So the DNA found on the pieces of chicken dinner and the palm print here that experts said matched Luna's on the napkin, plus the videotaped confessions, all that shit. All this stuff was pretty damning to both men over the court proceedings. So when they cross-examined Buddy's old girlfriend, Lockett, defense attorney Clarence Birch went back and forth a bit on Degorski and about the relationship before the alleged crime. She made mention that he was very abusive, but he never threatened to kill me before Brown's chicken murders, she said. Now, she admitted to being a drug and alcohol user since her teens, and Lockett also said that she smoked marijuana and drank alcohol with Degorski and Luna on numerous occasions. She actually dated Degorski from 1992 to 1994 after they met while being students at Fremd High School in Palatine. Now, Birch questioned Lockett on her memory loss and stuff like that due to her drug and alcohol abuse. She said that she only had complete losses that occurred occasionally during blackouts from drinking alcohol, and that would be the only time that her blackouts occurred. And repeatedly, she told Birch that she never planned on telling anyone of the crimes until he threatened her. She said, I had my life threatened. He killed 7. Why not 8? So this is why she decided to do something about it. So she made mention that she began to feel bad, but she also had a fear of being killed. So she said, the guilt I had in knowing who had done these things outweighed my fear, but I owed it to the families. Now, the former girlfriend also mentioned that Degorski said he telephoned her while she was under suicide watch in a psychiatric hospital back in 1993 here, and he actually told her to view the television news that night. So he was fucking bragging about this shit, right? Now she said, I saw the Brown's chicken murders on TV. Later, my mom brought me news articles to the hospital about the murders. So she said that she read them and then later threw them out. So Lockett testified that January 7th, a day before the murders, she entered a mental hospital for trying to kill herself with an overdose of NyQuil. This is a cold medication here, so that's why she was getting the doctor's help and everything. Now, also, the girl that they met that night also got up on the stand. This was the chick that they smoked the weed with who went and bought the fucking sneakers. So, in testimony for the prosecution, Eileen Bacala, this was the other friend of Degorski and Luna, she said that on the night of the murders, she punched out from her job at Jake's Pizza in Streamwood and drove to Carpentersville to meet both the men at a Jewel parking lot. Then they drove to Bacala's in her vehicle back into town at her house. And this is where they smoked pot, she said. So she testified that Luna and Degorski told her that they had robbed Brown's Chicken, and she saw a canvas bag containing about $1,000, she said, or more. But the jurors didn't consider either one of these testimonies here because Ann Lockett and Eileen Bacala were just fucking drug addicts and stuff, right? But yeah, I guess these guys weren't as important as the DNA evidence and all that because the jury questioned their accuracy because they were actually both drug users. I mean, it sucks that they had to look at shit like that, but whatever, they told them was the truth, but they actually just went forth on the fucking DNA evidence because it was concrete. On May 10th, 2007, Luna was found guilty on all 7 counts. And on May 18th, 2007, a jury decided against the death penalty for Luna. So now this means that Luna would spend the rest of his life in prison. Now the whole decision here was read to a packed courtroom. The reception was silent. 8 Cook County Sheriff's deputies lined up the aisles here just to ensure like security and all that. So once everything was read, the words kind of sunk in. Juan Luna turned to defense attorney Stephen Richards, and they kind of bear hugged each other here for a couple seconds there, and then Richard defended this guy throughout the whole fucking trial, right? Obviously, like they had a little bond, I guess, but this guy's a fucking murderer. And yeah, one of the lead defense attorneys here, Clarence Birch there, he bowed his head and whispered an apparent prayer. Now, 11 of the jurors who convicted Juan Luna of the 1993 chicken murders voted to sentence him to death, but his life was spared because of like some lone holdout there. Now, the 12-member jury spent just 2 hours deliberating. Then they voted for the death penalty. This is according to Cook County prosecutors, defense attorneys, and all that. So yeah, what happened here is like one of the jurors held out. They didn't want to do the whole fucking death penalty thing, and then it didn't happen. Now, under Illinois law, a death sentence can be imposed only by an anonymous jury vote. The split vote left the jury to recommend a life sentence for Luna instead. So the 12 jurors heard all these chilling details, the taped confession, everything was just set in stone. Even at the tape's conclusion here, Assistant Cook County State's Attorney Darren O'Brien asked Luna how he felt. So Luna said, well, I know I can't change time no more. I can't bring people back. I feel sad, and I'm sorry. And as he said this, his voice is kind of cracking a bit here. The decision actually pleased both Luna's family and several victims' family members who opposed the death penalty. And even, Luna's brother, George, he said, I don't think anyone should ever die, including my brother. And he said this as he was leaving the courtroom, number 500. But Other victims' family members kind of felt the opposite, right? Diane Clayton, this is mother of the victim, Marcus Nielsen. She said the life sentence was unjust. She said, "Not when 7 people were brutally killed. This cannot be justice. My son deserved better than this. The other 6 victims deserved better than this." And she was saying this all through tears and everything here. She actually sat in a wheelchair and everything, spoke to reporters in the lobby of the criminal courts building. And there was also a resident here from Schlumberg. Now, she said she will continue to honor her son's memory by thinking about him every day. She said, "You have to go on, but you never forget. I realized the death penalty would never bring my son back." Now, even Richard and Lynn Ellenfeld's 3 daughters, they received the jury's decision with blank expressions. Now, outside the courtroom, Jennifer Ellenfeld Schilling, she said that she respected the jury's decision, but added that Luna's friends and relatives should stop insisting that he be freed. She said, "It's an insult to us that he and his family proclaimed his innocence." And she also said, "Until they admit Juan Luna's guilt, their prayers are of little comfort." She said, "We both hope Luna and his family will accept his guilt and his role in these horrible crimes, and that they accept responsibility for his actions." And now we'll move on to the other dickhead, James Degorski. Now, on September 29, 2009, he was found guilty of all 7 counts of murder. And due to this here, it was part of a testimony from the girlfriend, Ann Lockett, and Eileen Bacala. Now, they both stated that Degorski separately confessed to them, and then Luna also implicated Degorski during his own confession back in 2002, so whatever, they had their info. Now, on October 20th, 2009, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. All but 2 of the jurors voted for a death sentence. So, all these guys are in fucking jail now. They fucking killed a bunch of people, and those people could have went on with their lives, could have did better things, but these guys just decided to pull a bullshit robbery. Now, the Brown's Chicken franchise never reopened, and it has since been demolished. The building was actually torn down back in 2001. A vacant space remained in its spot for several years too. I believe it's occupied by a bank building. I believe the bank's called Chase Bank. And at one point there was some talk about erecting a memorial to the victims, but eventually the idea faded and never got off the ground. Now, back in March of 2014, a jury awarded James Degorski $451,000 in compensation for damages after being beaten by a sheriff's deputy in Cook County Jail. This is back in May of 2002, where he actually suffered facial fractures that actually required surgery, and the deputy that did this was eventually fired from his job. And lastly, as we wind things down, folks, I believe I said that before, the incident had an adverse effect on the entire Brown's Chicken franchise. Sales of the restaurants actually dropped 35% within several months of the incident, and the company eventually had to close 100 restaurants in the Chicago area alone. And I believe that's it, folks. Luna and Degorski are actually imprisoned at Statesville Correctional Center for their crimes. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope it wasn't too technical in some parts, I guess. I don't know. But I thank you very much for tuning in to Twisted Tales podcast. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'll have Ted Bundy's Victims of Colorado up next. So give me a bit and I'll pop that off and we'll do some cool things together. Check me out on YouTube there. You can go follow a few other people here. Eye Opener Society, they kick ass. And Ouch Was That a Ghost podcast. They are both wonderful people, folks, so check them out. Thanks for listening.
Twisted Tales.